My name is Steve from Orchid, and today we're talking about managing by exception with Sage 300 and Orchid Systems modules. A bit about Orchid first. We're a developer of add-on solutions which enhance Sage 300, and we've been doing this since the early 1990s. We've got over 5,000 sites running our modules worldwide, and the average site is running 2 of our modules. All our solutions are developed using the Sage 300 SDK, and that means that they've all got the look and feel of the rest of Sage 300. We've got a close working relationship with Sage's development team, having developed both OEM and Gold solutions modules for Sage 300. We've got a number of modules which fit into a number of different categories, including collaboration and intelligence, automation and productivity, tailoring your system and integration, streamlining financial processes, and operations management. And today we'll be talking about 4 of these modules, which I will describe to you in some depth. So managing by exception, what is it all about? It really sits between the 2 ends of the scale, between micromanagement on the one side, where you're closely managing every aspect of your business, through to laissez-faire type management, where you're just leaving the various areas of the business to do their own thing. So laissez-faire means, in French, leaving people to do what they like. And so that is the other extreme. Managing by exception is identifying the areas that need to be closely looked at and focusing on those when these exceptions occur. So you're only really interested in the anomalies, the exceptions, and not the general run-of-the-mill business which is operating in the way that you expect it to operate. So this involves 5 activities or processes. Initially, defining what those exceptions are. Secondly, identifying those exceptions when they occur. Thirdly, escalating those exceptions. So once they've been identified, escalating them to the necessary people. And fourthly, going through an investigation process, finding out why those exceptions have occurred and what to do about it, which leads on to the 5th point, which is remediating exceptions. And whilst we run through this and show you this in operation using Sage 300, we'll be going through 4 of our modules. We'll be going through the Notes module, the Extender module, Info Explorer, and Process Scheduler. And all of them will be working, as you will see, in different ways, helping you manage your Sage 300 site by exception. So first of all, the Notes module. What this does is gives you context-sensitive information relating to a screen that you're looking at and the underlying data within that screen. So over here, what we're looking at is a customer number 1200, and a particular item, A11031, a desk lamp. And on the right-hand side, you're seeing information, notes, photographs, and the like, links of this particular information. Now, what we can do within these notes is also provide information of exceptions surrounding this information we're looking at. So here with this customer, we could be looking at overdue orders, which we should have shipped this customer. We could be looking at overdue invoices, which are exceptions as well, because they should have been paid by now and need to be acted on. We've also got, within all the screens within Sage 300, an email hotlink. Now, what this does is enables you to share links to screens and data within those screens. And this is very useful in acting on exceptions that are occurring. So here, for example, I might have identified that there's a problem with this particular order we're looking at, and I want to send this order to somebody else to identify, drill into it a bit further and find out why it's been outstanding for some time. and that person would then receive an email with a link which he'd click on, which would take him directly through into Sage 300, into this particular screen, and into this particular data. The second module we're looking at is Info Explorer. Now, what Info Explorer will enable us to do is analyze information and identify exceptions that need to be managed, that need to be acted on. And to do this, we can slice and dice pertinent information, have Info Explorer highlight certain information that might need identify exceptions, allow us to drill into particular screens within Sage 300 for further analysis and also potentially to be worked on as well. And lastly, to enable you to record budget and forecast information, because a large element of managing by exception is around the budgeting and forecasting process. If the actual results are not within the budgeted or forecast parameters, you'd probably need to want to look into those. And what we can do with Info Explorer is not only review or analyze information, but proactively enter information into Sage 300, and that is budget and forecast information. And we'll run through a bit of that later as well. The third module we'd be looking at today is Process Scheduler. And Process Scheduler allows us to run processes which will be looking through Sage 300 for exceptions that you need to have a look at. And this is generally done in conjunction with the Extender module, which describes what those exceptions are. We can also use Process Scheduler to manage by exception different components of your Sage 300 system. We can get Process Scheduler to schedule integrity checks, for example, and report the results of those if there are any issues or if there are any changes in the number of integrity errors between this time and the last time a data integrity check was run. We can have Info Explorer check for disk space. So if your database server is running out of disk space, once again, that would represent an exception that needs to be looked into. Process Scheduler can alert you via email to this, and the necessary actions can be taken to shrink the database or give that database more resources to work with. The next module we're looking at will be the Extender module. The Extender module comes in different flavors, and the ones that we will primarily be looking at today will be the Alerting and Logging module, which is the configurator version, and the customizer version, which includes scripts. Now, where Extender is very useful is it can run through data and identify exceptions for you, either in real time when data is being entered to ensure we don't end up with exceptions, or after the fact, where we will have Extender, with the aid of Process Scheduler, run through data, identify exceptions, and then email those exceptions to the necessary people concerned. So now that we've had a brief run through what each one of these modules do, let's have a look at it all in action. Now we're going to look at using Info Explorer to analyze the underlying data sitting within Sage 300, and this analysis process will result in the identification of exceptions, which we'll then drill into and manage, proactively manage, either through getting other people involved or finding out what the underlying issue is, hopefully with a view to correcting it. So looking at Info Explorer, across the top I have different areas that we're working with, and this cube here is a financials cube. So it's got general ledger information, it's got accounts receivable information, accounts payable information, cash balances and the like. And each one of these tabs across the top represents a different area within the financials area. Running down the side, we then have different views of that information, which we can then slice and dice, analyze, and drill into more detailed information if we need to. So looking at the first view here, we've got our GL actual versus budget, and we've got different views of that data where we've got a comparison year on year, looking in this case at two different years, 2019 and 2020. What we can do is drill into any of this. So here we've got a revenue total of 26 million last year. This year looking at 10 million, not that great. So what we can do is then drill into that and look at more detail. So now we're breaking the information down by account number, natural account number. We may then wish to pull in divisional information if that's going to make sense, and region information as well. So now what we can see is how the commercial and the retail operations are going in connection with revenue. Trial balance showing much the same sort of thing, but in this case what we have is actual and budget information. So what I could do here is I might not be interested in balance sheet related information, so I might untick that, showing all, and what I'll do is go down and just pick the revenue group. So now it's just showing me revenue, it's showing me my actual information, my budget information, and a variance. And once again, what I can do is drag down other dimensions like division and region, which are segments within the general ledger and within the general ledger account number. And that will then provide me with additional information should I need that. What we can do as well is use Info Explorer as a staging post. So what we can do is list all the transactions that need work done on them, and in this case I've got all the unposted batches in AR, AP and the GL. So if I was interested just in AP at this stage and invoice batches, if I click on that, here they all are. What I might then elect to do is go off into one of these batches. I can drill through to that underlying batch, and if I've got the authority to do so, I could go ahead and post it. Now, a particularly useful one is looking for exceptions in the accounts receivable area, and this really relates to outstandings. So what people owe you and what is currently overdue. So over here we've got a dashboard showing us the information at a fairly summarized level. But what you might want to do is, once again, we've got all these different views. We could look at this information by customer group or salesperson, or we could just go ahead and have a look at the underlying aging. So down here I've got a list of all my overdues, and these particular customers are not looking that great. And what I might do is decide to sort this information so that the customer with the largest overdue balance appears first, and that appears to be Breakaway Designs over here. Number 2 over here is Mr. Ronald Black, and what we might then do is have a look at more detail relating to Ronald Black. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is just see what other fields are available for me to pull down. And what I can do is actually pull down the document number. So let me do that. And what I can now do is see exactly what invoices are making up that amount due from Ronald Black. And here's one in particular, $145,000. What I can then do is drill through to that and have a look. Now what I'm seeing over here is that somebody's changed the credit limit on Ronald Black. I could go off and have a look to see what who's done that. But right now, this particular invoice may present an issue. What I can always do is send this to somebody else. So I'm going to send this to my colleague, Susan. And what I'm going to do over here is say to Susan, please have a look at this invoice, and I'll put the link in, and I'll give it a heading. So I've said here, please have a look at this invoice and get back to me. If I then send that to Susan, it's going to appear in her email with that link, and when she clicks that link, she'll then be taken straight through to the screen within Sage 300. And all I needed to do there was click on this email smart link up there, and that was what actually opened up Outlook and enabled me to do that. So from Susan's side, I'll just go into Outlook, and here I've got Susan, and here's that particular email which speaks about Ronald Black, and here's the message that I'd sent through to her. And if she then went through and clicked on that, then that information would appear. So a good way to, if you are managing by exception, to share information with your colleagues. If you do notice an exception, a very quick and easy way to convey that information to one of your colleagues. So continuing to run through the financials cubes, we've got something very similar on the accounts payable side, which gives us some dashboards and the like, and also once again the ability then to drill down and have a look at a lot of different views of this underlying information. So here's a very detailed view giving me the information by vendor, document numbers and the like. Once again, I could go through and see exactly what is due now, what isn't. I can sort this information. I can filter it. So I might only want to see transactions over $5,000 or $10,000, and then I'd be working on that information by exception. I'm only looking at the big numbers. Something similar here on the AP purchases front. Information relating to distribution sets, what's come through, and AP purchases by vendor over here. And we can then get into the detail through having a look at AP purchases by general ledger account, by currency, and have a look at different charts and the like. Another one here, close to lots of people's hearts, is the underlying cash balances. And over here I've got a listing of what my current cash balances are. If there is anything specifically I'd like to have a look at or drill down into, there seem to be large balances over here. Let's go in and have a look what they are. Once again, all I need to do is go through and pull down additional information, which I'm now showing. The batch information and other information, currency information and the like, and it's then just a case of dragging it into the detail over here, area over here, and then doing a drill down. We're now having a look at a second set of cubes. This time it's for the operations of the company. So we're looking at stock on hand, analysis of purchase orders, sales orders, bin tracking, and RMA. So looking at this up front, our stock analysis, our first one over here that we have is showing us what inventory we've got on hand and what's on purchase order and sales order. So it's showing what is due to be coming through in the future. Some other views over here with expected stock movement as well. So this one over here is showing us the quantity on hand, what is currently on purchase order, what's on sales order, and the quantity forecast based on those future purchase orders and sales orders. What we can do is, if we're looking for any exceptions here, we may need to have a look. We might think that these purchase orders here appear to be a bit high. Let's go in and have a look to see exactly what that relates to. What we can then do is drag in the purchase order number, and from there we're then able to see exactly what made that up, and from there we can pick up the 85 that is sitting on purchase order. This particular purchase order here, number 4, might be the one we're not too sure about. So once again, what we can then do is drill through into that underlying purchase order and decide what needs to be done with it from a management perspective. So there it is over there. So from a purchase order analysis perspective, we can keep an eye on lots of different things. Over here we've got late POs, those we've expected to come in already but haven't come through yet. Those that we expect to come through within 30 days or within the next 60 days, and the ability there to age our purchase orders as well. Also then particular purchase orders in a particular state. So for example over here, purchase orders where the inventory is received but the invoice hasn't been processed yet. On the order entry front over here, we've got the ability to traffic light the various transactions. So up here, for example, we've got our outstanding orders on the top left-hand corner over here. And some of those orders are well overdue and they're highlighted red. The green ones are all okay, they're for the future, and things seem to be going okay with that. But what we might need to do is go off and have a look at one of these purchase orders, or rather sales orders, and let's go and do that. We'll drill into the sales order. Number 69, and we can see here that it relates to customer number 1200, Ronald Black. And on the right hand side here we've got a number of different notes, and these notes can be configured to aid management by exception. And some examples here are information relating to why fields have changed and who's actually made those changes. There may have been some exceptional changes to the credit limit, for example, and that's been recorded up here via an extender script, which is now putting that information up here within the notes area. Within notes, we can also record and present URLs, pictures and the like, but probably more interesting from a management by exception perspective, we can produce information relating to summarized transaction information, and down here what we've got are incomplete orders. So the exception here being that any orders that are not finished, not complete, should show up here. So if anybody is looking at a particular order relating to a customer, they'll be shown all the other orders that this customer has that haven't been completed yet. And if one of them is interesting to them, they wonder why it's there, it's simply a case of double clicking on it, and from there they'll actually get that order. So they can drill down from within this notes area to the other orders. So here I've just drilled down into order number 65. Once again, I might want to email this information to somebody else. They may find that I might need them to look into it, and it's just a case then of clicking on the email button over here, and from there I can send the information pertaining to that order along with a link to that order to one of my colleagues, who then will be receiving that information and will look into it. So apart from order entry and being able to analyze what people have been buying what, if there are big variations between this year and last year, comparing budget information against budgeted sales information for customers against what has actually come through, one can get a good feel for whether the company is running as expected or not. Bin tracking, which is another Orchid module. Here what we've got is a listing of the bin transfer documents. Once again, traffic highlighted. Yellow means that something needs to be done about those. They've been there for a while. There's nothing red here, so there's nothing that's been outstanding for a very long period of time based on the criteria that we've put into Info Explorer. And from here I can then go through and actually once again highlight any one of these transactions and drill through to the underlying data within Sage 300. So there's the underlying bin transfer screen within Sage 300. On the RMA side, we can do the same type of thing, and what is quite interesting is to see how the RMAs are compared to the sales values for particular customers. So you may have a customer who is sending you a lot of RMAs, there's a lot of information, a lot of items being returned, and you may think this represents a very real problem, but you might find that they are your largest customers who are selling a lot of a particular item, and as a result you would expect more items to come back. But what you can also do then is, depending on what type of inventory you have, you may want to keep a track of fault codes, you may want to keep a track of which customers are returning inventory for what reasons, and through that you can improve customer service through focusing on those exceptions, those ones which are not the norm and the ones that you want to proactively manage. We are now going to look at Process Scheduler and how that can help us manage by exception. What I'm going to do is go into the Schedules area and review the schedules that we've got set up. And these schedules are running various processes to determine whether or not exceptions have occurred, and if those exceptions have occurred, they're then notifying the appropriate people via email. So in the first one over here, we're checking disk space. So this is managing the infrastructure, the server, might be the database server. And in this particular instance, we are keeping an eye on the hard drive, and if it goes below 30 gigabytes with free disk space, we then want to tell the person concerned that we need to do some work on the database or free up some more disk space. Other ones we have here, the daily checks schedule runs a couple of extender scripts which check if the stock is below the minimum value, and secondly highlights any AR customers that are overdue on their individual invoices or over their credit limit. And that information is being sent more than likely to the salespeople to ensure that additional inventory or services aren't sold to these customers until such time as their accounts get back in order. Now, you'll be able to see that once we look at the emails that have been created by these scripts. Other ones we have down here relate to data integrity. So what it's doing is Process Scheduler is going to run through the data in the system. And if there are any issues, it's going to then email the people concerned. And it can do that for multiple companies. You can see over here we've got multiple companies being checked. And the last one over here relates to auditing the modules that are loaded and the various product updates as well. So once again, we're dealing with management by exception here. We're keeping a track of changes that have taken place. And in this instance, we've decided that it's a good idea to alert people to changes in the environment. And in this case, the changes to the environment are either new modules or product updates. Let's now have a look at the email and see what has been produced by these schedules, which have run as a result of just Process Scheduler and as a result of Process Scheduler in conjunction with the extender module. So what has come through here is initially a few emails relating to specific customers who are either over their credit limit or have gone over their terms. So the invoices they have are now overdue. So we've got customer number 7100 and customer 1200 and customer 1100. I'll run in and have a look at customer number 1200. So these emails have a link which, if clicked on, will take you through into Sage 300 and then through to the relevant screen with this data. So whoever is receiving this email can very quickly get to the source of the information and act on it. So clicking on that, I then get through to the customer inquiry screen, and I can then look through it, see what documents are outstanding. I can look to see what receipts, refunds, adjustments, and so forth are sitting in there. Running through another one of the emails that was generated, we have a number of exceptions here relating to inventory. And these are items which are understocked at the moment and need to be acted on. So I can see over here, we've got item A11030 in location 3. We've got 42 on hand, and that's lower than the minimum quantity, which should be 230. So if I click on the underlying link, it's taken me through to the location details screen, so I can see exactly what is on hand in all the locations. I might be able to shift some items from one location to this particular one, and I can use other forms of drill down that are provided for you with Sage 300. Here I have another email, in this case in relation to Ronald Black, and this is an extender script that has been set up to send somebody an email each and every time an order is captured for Ronald Black. So it's giving me the order number and various other information relating to this, and what we could have done here as well is we could have included a link so that we could have gone through to it. And lastly, what we have over here is an email detailing an exception in relation to the underlying infrastructure. So in this case, our disk space is, we've run out of available disk space. It's getting low. We need to do something about that. We've got 16 gigabytes left, and it's lower than the recommended 30 gigabytes. So at least now I know to do something about that. The next exception I want to demonstrate really takes the form of validation, where we're not going to allow any transactions to be processed with less than a 10% margin. So what we're doing here is managing by exception. We're not allowing exceptions like this to take place. Often with managing by exception, it's an after the event thing. Once something has happened, it may need to be looked at. However, in this case, we're catching the issue in real time and not allowing it to happen. So what I'm going to do is go through to order entry. And I'm going to pick up a customer, number 1100. And I'll pick up some desk lamps. I'll order 10 of them, and I'm going to change the price down to 35, which will actually pull the margin down to about 9%. Now, as I go off this tab and try to post this, you'll see here that it's saying 9.31 doesn't exceed the 10% threshold, so it's not going to allow this to take place. Now, these messages and this validation will work in the web screens as well. So the web screen will get exactly the same message saying that this particular order can't be processed. So here's an example of management by exception in real time. What I'd now like to demonstrate is how we can use the notes panel to show exceptions to people who are looking at particular information. So these are showing context-sensitive exceptions within Sage 300. So looking at shipments here, for example, and I'll page along and have a look. What I've now got on the right hand side, I've got our customer number 1200, and I'm in the shipment screen, so I'm now in a position to start doing some shipments if need be. But in this case, what I can see over here is there are some open back orders which might need to be investigated. So it's not showing All orders, it's just those back orders that haven't been fulfilled yet. And possibly more importantly, what I'm seeing over here is the aging. And I'm seeing that Mr. Ronald Black, customer number 1200, is actually over their terms. They've got $107,000 that haven't been paid and should have been paid by now. So based on this information, I might decide not to ship this particular shipment because of such a large outstanding balance. If I'm having a look through this information down here, it may require, I might want to see the underlying detail behind this. So I can always go in and double click on any one of these back orders and look at the underlying information sitting behind that. And there it is. So here's an example of working with data and exceptions being presented to the person working in Sage 300 as they go along. They're being shown the relevant exceptions which relate to the data they're working on, customers they're working on, vendors they're working on at this point in time. In the previous example, we saw that Ronald Black had exceeded his credit limit by quite a significant amount. So I'm now sitting having a look at his record, and I can see up on the right-hand side I've got some information relating to the credit limit and when it was last changed, and it seems to be very low at this stage. So another thing I can do to aid in the process of analyzing why exceptions have occurred is we can keep a track of what changes have been made and who's made them. So in this case, I'm particularly interested in the credit limit. I can go through to the processing tab, and on that I can then hit a hotkey which will then tell me what changes have been made to the credit limit, who made them, and what they changed them to. So here I have that information, what the old value was, what the new value is, and who of course did it. And I can go right far back in time to see who had might have temporarily changed the credit limit to allow such large invoicing to have been done and shipments made for Mr. Ronald Black. What we've now done is really given you an overview of management by exception, what processes or tasks are involved with that, and we've then run through 4 of the most popular modules Orchid has, which assist in this process of managing by exception, and we've given you some hopefully some real-life examples of the type of thing that can be done. Now, here are just examples. Obviously, the sky is the limit, and each company is unique in terms of its requirements and how it needs to be managed. So hopefully this has given you an idea of what can be achieved and some ideas as to how you can start managing your company with Sage 300 in such a way that you are just primarily looking at the exceptions and not spending an undue amount of time on the areas which are running well. Thank you.